Little bit of a reprieve from the wet weather that we've had throughout the last couple of weeks here. The rainy season has unofficially started in South Florida, but one of our favorite views, and what a day in the weather department. Bright sunshine here in Hallandale Beach, a turf course ready for action here. We hope tomorrow afternoon. 10 races today over the fast main track as we welcome everybody from outside to in. Jason Blewett, our clubhouse studios on the third floor, joined, of course, in tandem by our own Acacia Courtney, who's right outside our paddock, our walking ring, and our studio set down in the backyard, so to speak. And Acacia, although it has been quite rainy here, and we had over 4 inches of rain, according to the Track Super, since last Monday, it has turned out to be a very nice day, and we're happy to be back here at Gulfstream.
It's pretty hot down here, Jason. I'm not going to lie. It's a warm one for sure, but it is beautiful. The sun is out. Just a typical South Florida day. So we're happy to have that versus the alternative. Glad the rain has stopped. I'm sure with all of this sunshine, the turf will dry out pretty quickly as it does. And we do, as you mentioned, have a great track maintenance crew, and I'm sure it'll be ready for action as soon as possible.
Absolutely. As we gear up for back-to-back 10s here on both Thursday and Friday afternoon, we're starting a little earlier this week. Evidently today and tomorrow, a post time at 12:45, 12:50 Eastern. So we're glad you're with us, everybody, on this live fast main track Thursday edition of Gulfstream Park today, kicking off not only a new week, but our first 5-day racing week of the 2020 Spring Meet. It may not feel all that much like a traditional Memorial Day weekend, Acacia, given everything that's going on, but we are indeed running here this coming Monday.
We certainly are. We hope that you'll join us. They draw today for that card, so we'll keep you posted on what to expect on that special Monday. Memorial Day will run Thursday through Monday this weekend. As you said, it's not a typical Memorial Day weekend, but certainly the reason is still the same as we remember those who've certainly given the ultimate sacrifice for our country.
Absolutely. As we shift gears and just focus in on what's doing this afternoon over the next few hours, not only having the 10 races, but in tandem that gigantic, near seven-figure jackpot guarantee in the Rainbow Six that'll kickstart in the 5th race. You can see the money up there. It's a lot of bread at $900,000 as the threshold guarantee. That'll start middle of the day. Again, Thursday's 5th race on the main track. What are you doing in this early pick 5 to start the new week?
Well, I did end up using a couple. We unfortunately are left with a smaller field in the first here, given the scratches and off the turf. And I did not use the horse that's taking all of the early money in Act Like Artie, who ran very well last time out, but her pedigree's just all turf, and so I wasn't sure what to expect on her with the main track today. We have 2-year-olds in what would have been our first 2-year-old turf race this season. They will take the main track, but don't worry, Wesley Ward still has a couple of runners in there. We have a couple from Mark Cassey as well, and an interesting little field, and some horses making their second and one even their third start so far this season. Third race is where I'm going to single, Jason. I just stood alone with Brasstown, who I think is the speed of the speed, takes a drop in class, and just not really loving anyone else in there. I'm going to hope that that horse gets the job done for me, as I'm too deep in the 4th and using 3 to close things out in race 5, which of course also kicks off the Rainbow Six.
1-3-6 for you to start. You've got 3 turf horses who are going to take the bulk of the play in this race, 2 of which are coming out of the same, or at least faced each other back in the same race back on March 8th. The rail horse, who has a Rod Ortiz Jr. now, and the one setting the mood, who ran well with a wide trip. I had a feeling you'd take that filly by Lee as well. The number 5, Act Like Artie, who had trouble in that race, who has since come back with a good effort for Mike Maker, yet is bred up, down, sideways, diagonal to be a turf horse. And the 6, Lababia, who's run pretty well in her races for trainer Michael Matz.
One thing I liked about Lababia is that she does have quite a bit of speed, and we've seen Act Like Artie improve with every start. I agree about that. And like I said, just given the fact that she looks like she's all turf, but I do think maybe it's a little bit noteworthy. Mike Maker leaves her in here. She is going to try the main track, and I suppose often when you have horses that are not so experienced, there are still maidens. Sometimes, hey, take a shot. You never know what's going to happen as far as if they'll like the dirt. Also did think with the speed of 2-Cent Tootsie, who's not at the level of the others we mentioned, but has run actually well in some off-the-turf races on the main track.
No, she has the best dirt for more experience, more chances, which you don't like. But I agree with you. If one of these 3 turf horses is going to be beaten, she becomes a viable potential upsetter for trainer Tom Albatrani. Let's move on to the second. We bust out the 2-year-old fillies, and in this off-the-turf 5 furlong, $65,000 maiden special weight. And as you had noted, Acacia, in your early pick 5, really in this second race, it's a case of things coming in pairs and in twos with the 1-2 punch for trainer Wesley Ward, and Mark Casse also setting out a 1-2 punch first-time starting duo.
And we have an MTO, which is a second-time starter for Wesley Ward in Lyme, who took a ton of money. And in fact, our first 2-year-old race of the season, she had that extended lead and ended up getting caught by Quinoa Tifa, who ran very nicely for Juan Alvarado on that day. And looking at this race, Jason, and I know we've seen maybe 2-year-olds for this barn not be potentially as sharp as perhaps in years past, but she has the experience. She has the dirt form, the dirt race already. I think in this spot that could be a key, but I, like you, intrigued by the first starter from Upstart, which is pretty fun as well. He was one of my favorite horses to look at on the track. He was really a stunner, so I'm excited to see his babies on the track.
And we think of Rick Viola Jr. In fact, when we discussed this race in the second, I have pulled a little bit of a teaser and maybe spoiler. I pulled, and we have it waiting for the afternoon discussion of Upstart winning the 2015 Holy Bull Stakes right here at Gulfstream. He was good in New York, but he loved it here at Gulfstream Park without a doubt. Basically spent his entire career chasing both American Pharaoh as a 3-year-old and then later on Frosted as a 4-year-old, but a talented horse in his own right, and he's in the mix with the number 6 Baby Mo. Again, you don't want to belabor the point, but the speed with the good dirt race first out is probably going to make Lyme a big favorite here, you would imagine, as the one with experience for trainer Wesley Ward. We move on, and what could be a very short price start to this early pick 5. You got a big favorite who you singled looming in Thursday's third race as we go the 2 turns at a mile and a 16th on the main track with these 3 lifetime $8,000 claimers. There are some potential pitfalls or red flags per se with the 7 Brasstown, the most obvious of which is the lackluster form of late, but the big drop to 8 for Safi with that early speed. He's a tough horse to go against here on paper, isn't he?
He really is, and it's just, I think, kind of a back to reality type of move that they got this horse, I'm sure, with some high hopes and running at some comparable levels of what he had been facing, and things didn't pan out, and this is probably just maybe where he belongs, and he does have that early speed. Seeing that Irad Ortiz takes the call, I think that those are all notable things, and again, I just wasn't really bowled over by anybody else in this field. I respect Monmouth Drive, who ran very well, if you could see him in that race last time out, but he had been knocking on the door, and he fits here first off the claim, and Bye Bye Man, who will have Edgar Zayas up.
And it is an easier race for Brasstown mainly, and to a large extent as well, the number 2 Monmouth Drive was probably going to be a clear-cut second choice with that early scratch of the 1/3 Army, who was going to take some attention. But again, it's really all about Brasstown and how you feel with a form, or at least a form cycle that's deteriorated a bit, but he looks very well meant this afternoon, dipping in for the 8,000. As we cut back to 5 furlongs now, moving on to Thursday's 4th race, we're off the turf here in this 3-and-up filly mare, $40,000 to $30,000 claiming race, maiden claiming race, and I think a real convergence between the 2 biggest players who you and I both have 1-2 in the 5-3 order. You've got major changes with 2 different looking horses, but nonetheless 2 horses that look solid, that have speed and good connections. And the 3 Carolyn Smile, who just found the sloppy track in 7 a little too much to handle last time out, and our second time starting Top Selection, who I think landed at a great spot here on the dirt in the 5, Casey's Girl.
Yeah, I was intrigued by her trying the turf today, but given the fact that she already had a solid dirt race against Maiden Special Weight Company with dirt meant horses, where we saw Royal Megan come out of that to win as well, I thought the drop is going to be key. Just second time out, this just looks like a nice little spot for her for sure. Carolyn Smile is interesting. She does have that speed, and I will say her race for 52 back was very, very good. And I remember last time just being amazed at how much money she took, even though she was technically taking a bit of a step up in class back into the state bred special weight. But I agree with you. I think actually the shorter the better. So this might be a good spot for her.
I'm with you on that. 5 to 6 is probably the right spot for her, just in the distance department. And although you've got the benefit of the 5 Casey's girl being a second-time starter. The one real separating, dividing line between those two fillies, not that Casey's girl is probably all that slow out of the gate. Carolyn Smiles faster than her, and she could be very tough here, cutting down and running down, turning back to 5 furlongs for trainer Ralph Nix in that off-the-turf, I should say, 4th race on the program. As we take a little time out here on Gulfstream Park today, we'll try to open things up, maybe some prices coming up after this quick break here on GP Today. Final 2/3 of May 2020, if you can believe it, underway on just another picture-perfect Thursday afternoon with 10 races coming down the pike here at Gulfstream Park. Things obviously quiet and pretty serene outside. That'll change in about 40 minutes' time with the first of 10 on a main track exclusive program as Jason and Acacia catch up with all of you for our second segment of Gulfstream Park today. And for good reason, Acacia, we have a lot of money guaranteed in the Jackpot Rainbow Six, and do want to remind everybody to take you on tomorrow in our free-to-play Beat the Expert.
That's right. Hopefully you're handicapping Gulfstream Park anyway. You can enter on our Facebook page or on the Gulfstream Park website. If you pick more winners than me, you could have the chance to win one of those cool Beat the Expert polos, as Ron Nicoletti would say. But hey, it's a lot of fun. We love everybody playing every week, and we know a lot of people look forward to it, and so do we, even though we get beaten every week, it seems.
Well, yeah, that's all right. It's all fun. We're good sports about it. A little levity never hurt anybody.
Right.
And again, given the fact that since Monday alone we've had about 4 inches, 4¼ inches in terms of just a rainfall down here in Hallandale Beach, you'd like to think, hopefully, fingers crossed, tomorrow afternoon for our free-to-play Beat the Expert, we'll be back on the turf. I mean, that's all really dependent upon Mother Nature, but fingers crossed in that area. As you'll set your sights today on the $900,000 guaranteed jackpot Rainbow Six, you came up with Brasstown as your single in the early pick 5 today. Do you have a single here throughout the rainbow?
I do not. I didn't end up singling. I've got 4320 there as we have $900,000 guaranteed. I'm 3 deep using the same 3 horses that I used in the cash out. I use just the 4 indirectly and the 11 Mountain Breeze, hoping that these two can handle the dirt. They've been facing solid competition. I still think in that 7th race, I have a feeling Valdaco is going to run very, very well. He's been knocking on the door in his last couple. Here's hoping we get a chance to see him break through today. And you know it must be an off-the-turf day because I have the 14 used in race number 8. But still, as we get on 9th race today, still a feature, main track always, that allowance optional claiming, high level, some really salty horses in there. I use Wentz, Mucho, and the number 5, Admiral Lynch.
Admiral Lynch coming back now with trainer Mike Maker. You are 1-4 and an off-the-turf Thursday nightcap, race number 10 this afternoon, 4320 for Acacia's ticket, 1-2-4 in this upcoming 5th race, and the 4 big spender taking a big page and sharing a number of parallels to Safi's Brasstown, who's probably going to be an odds-on favorite in the 3rd. You, hands down, in just 2 words here, big spender, have the nucleus to this upcoming Jackpot Rainbow Six opening leg, and how you, I think, approach this race as a whole pretty much depends upon your stance and your opinion with this horse who's taking a big precipitous plummet off the claim for owner Frank Calabrese.
And one reason I'm a little bit more comfortable, I would say, with Brasstown's drop in class is that he's been with that barn. He's had 3 races that were not as sharp as perhaps they would have hoped for. So the drop kind of makes sense. This one's first off the claim, and maybe it turned out that it was a claim that didn't pan out at perhaps as productively as had been expected. But he's been keeping some good company. He's been taking money. He's been running well against higher level competition. So I do find it a bit curious that he goes right into the 6250, but take nothing away from the speed and his overall ability. I was thinking I might get a little bit of a better price on the likes of Money Come, who has some dirtied up form, certainly, but does actually have a few solid races that could compete in here.
Yeah, no, his form from last autumn throughout the summer in 2019, pretty solid. Last couple of races separated by a decent amount of time. They've been somewhat lackluster, and that does concern me, but he's back off a near 80-day layoff. You've got Carlos David here, who's done well with his new acquisitions, and maybe just a little bit of time away from the entry box combined with Carlos first off the claim. Maybe that'll get Money Come back on track, who I have in the third spot. The two Alaskans going to get bet, although this race, I do think, because of the presence of the four big spender, and it's a decently sized field. I mean, you and I both have the number 12 horse in our super. This is not a layup spot by any stretch to try winners for the first time after beating, in hindsight, very little last time out for maiden 12-5 as a big even money favorite. And Deckology, I mean, he's the 12 in here. He will have Victor LeBron. His last race in context to this field was an okay effort.
It was very solid, absolutely. And he had been running against tougher prior to that. He fits in here. Unfortunately, just will have to work out a trip from that far outside post.
Halfway home as we move on to an all-main track, late pick 5, and I've got a ticket brewing here. Standing alone, Acacia noted the 14 horse in the 8th race. Well, can you tell the nightcap isn't off the turfer? I've got the number 16 in Grado, who I just, in hindsight, missed him in his maiden victory. That's been the story of my horse playing life and career, it seems, but his last race with the figure and the early speed and the fact that it was on the dirt, he catches a great spot to try winners for the first time, and I think he's a tough favorite to beat in the Thursday nightcap, and I built this ticket knowing he was waiting in the wings, so to speak, about 4 or 5 pages deep in the past performances. I built this entire $36 play around him, and I've got some coverage. I had a tough time trimming off, if I'm being honest, races 7, 9, and 6 in particular. I wanted to shorten this up or at least lighten up the $36 amount a little bit, but in the end, I'm going to opt for a 2-4-11 in this opening leg as we discuss Acacia, this upcoming Thursday 6th race, and I think it's a race very much predicated on the presence of Mountain Breeze, who I think in just straight up talented ability might be the best horse in the race, but ultimately you run into that question, and it's a question and a gray area we've encountered here quite often over the last couple of weeks. Can this turf horse, who's probably the classiest horse in the race, can he transfer that form, that solid last out effort for John Kimmel over to the main track this afternoon as the favorite?
Well, it is interesting because he debuted on the main track, and that was back in July, and then he moved to John's Barn last time out when trying the turf, and also a significantly lesser competition level, and feeling that his only dirt race was for maiden special weight. It was as a 2-year-old. It's almost kind of like this is his first dirt race ever. It's not really, I think, easy to kind of gauge off of that one dirt race. So hoping that given the fact that it's a drop just based off of dirt form, it'll be a good spot for him. But really, it's a lot of unknown because we saw a huge improvement from him switching to the turf last time. And I, like you, took a horse that maybe you have a little bit more faith in and just has a bit more experience and some recency. I had liked him last time indirectly on that wet track. That he was actually my pick that afternoon, and I just think he didn't handle the wet track as much as I would have hoped. But I feel like a fast main track, given pedigree, given his appearance, will actually be an okay spot.
Tad shorter distance, too,
Yeah,
around
that's
one
fair.
turn. So you've got a little bit of a curveball in the just configuration of this race as opposed to his last off the turf start here towards the end of April, back on the 26th. And I think maybe a little less long race or a little less real estate could help him out to boot. And I'm with you moving forward this afternoon as he knocks heads with the number 2 Express Boy. And again, I think the real key to the race, as we stated, ultimately it's what the 11 Mountain Breeze does in his switch back to the main. Let's move on to the 7th scheduled dirt race coming up, and some tough horses here in this open $6,250 claiming race for older runners. We do have that one scratch of the number 8 Silent Tiger, who would have been part of the now duo, would have been a trio coming out of a race. Will bring everybody back on the the afternoon of May 2nd here, and we're going to concern ourselves with Valdaco, who you like, who goes wide, and really a case and a tale of two different trips and decisions at this point of the far turn run between Valdaco, who in that white cap and the red sleeves, the rider, the 7-pound apprentice, opted to go pretty wide, lost quite a bit of ground, whereas Dr. Harlan stayed inside. Things opened up. In fact, he was all by himself down there, and both of these horses ran pretty well in this race behind Jamaican, who for Peter Walder at a big price just refused to lose and wound up upsetting the field on the front end.
He certainly did, and that was a big race from him. I actually really thought that, all things considered, with Valdaco's trip, he ran a really big race, and he just never really had any opportunity to save ground or take an edge anywhere. I think Hector Barrios might be a nice fit for him. He's been knocking on the door, and typically I don't love horses that consistently finish second like he has been doing, but I think that some of his recent races, he just maybe hasn't gotten the easiest time of it. And this is not an easy spot for him at all. But again, I felt like he might be a little bit of a price. I respect Dr. Harlan, and curious what we're going to get from Ray's Warrior, who kind of flashed some of his former strong races last time out when first off the claim for Kelly Breen.
I'd like to look at that race thinking maybe you're going to get, or you're dealing with, a Ray's Warrior who might be rounding up and back into his form. He's a tough old pro, this 8-year-old who is an 8-time winner, but the frank of the matter is he just has not been at the level he was a couple of weeks, give or take, before Christmas time. But that last start for Kelly Breen, a step in the right direction, and I do like that Kelly has taken a bit of time getting this old pro back to the races, close to 40 days between that last start and today, and maybe fresh is best for that horse at this stage of the game in the 7th. Moving on to the 8th, again off the turf, we'll go a mile on the main track, a 2-lifetime 3-and-up filly mare, $25,000 claiming race. In looking around, I almost pulled the trigger on the 14, Lady Fiorella, who we both have second, but if I'm being, again, blunt about it, it's the first time Carlos David in picking the horse that you picked as well, the number 2, Senseless Drama. It's first time Carlos, and it's that running style, that early speed that won the over.
All the other speed seems to have scratched out of this race, so I saw it kind of playing out as Senseless Drama being able to dictate on the front end, and it's a filly by Big Drama. You've got Irad Ortiz, you know, it's somebody that's going to be sharp about how the pace might potentially play out in here, and I just thought we'd see her kind of run away from the rest of the field, though I will agree, Lady Fiorella does have the strongest dirt form of what's left of the field.
And strong might be the operative word as a whole, looking a pretty succinct word there, but strong careers and big performances are really synonymous with this cast in our featured 9th race on the afternoon, as after that early scratch of the 4, my top pick, Extraordinary Jerry, we go with a cast of 7. I'm not sure what's the biggest pre-race key or nugget going into this race. It does seem like it's an evenly matched crew, and some of these horses have their own share of questions to prove this afternoon. The first of which I think is, or at least the first horse we're going to talk about. Let's get to the replay of the Chilean bred Mitre Por Ciento and his U.S. debut, where he got a big figure, and basically at this point of the turn, he has already ripped the rug out from everybody else, and basically under an easy hand ride, almost under wraps, took the lead at will and kicked clear against an easier field, but did so very visually impressive here in his stateside debut. I see, though, Acacia, because you don't have him like I do in your top 4 today, I'm anxious to see if he can back this up with an encore that's as good as this race we're looking at.
It will be interesting. He was a bit late switching leads, and I thought he, though, visually, as you said, finished up really well. And for being his first U.S. start as well, I mean, certainly hats off to Amador Sanchez and what he's done with this horse. And Mi 3% translates to my 3%. So we'll see how he does in his second U.S. start here. But I thought it was a good one. He's just going to have to face a lot tougher this afternoon. And he's got some other speed in here. Jaguar Paws has speed. Wentz, we know, is quick. And I'm hoping that my top pick, Mucho, can kind of find his way again and get a nice trip in here.
He's always hinted at being a solid horse. I mean, you don't have to go all that far back, looking at right around Labor Day of 2018 when this horse for Bill Mott as a 2-year-old debuted. Can't imagine over his illustrious Hall of Fame career, Bill has run all that many horses. Maybe Majestic War Warrior and the Hopeful, but that's not a race. When I think of Belmont, I don't necessarily think of the Grade 1 Hopeful, yet this horse was even money. As time has gone on, though, you're still, I think, looking at Mucho as a glasses half full kind of son of blame here, hoping that maybe he still has his best days ahead of him.
Yeah, I think that that's possible. He could just be one who was very precocious, and now he's kind of found where he's comfortable, and maybe this is what we're going to get from him. But I think that he's a solid horse. He didn't have the easiest trip last time out at Tampa and the Pelican, but his races prior to that in those allowance races in Kentucky I thought were very strong. And again, just looking at how I felt the race might play out as far as speed, and Admiral Lynch being one of those. But Admiral Lynch has a lot of talent for sure. I'm just hoping that Mucho's going to be kind of in the catbird seat, getting the best of it with a lot of speed up front.
Could be a very glib searing pace without a doubt with Wentz on the fence, and even the 5 Admiral Lynch, who I scratched into. I mean, again, adding some fuel to what could be an inferno. Pretty classy horse who's run well for a number of different barns, and coming back, of course, off a bit of a layoff and fresh with a very spirited local work tab at Gulfstream Park. I'll keep my fingers crossed with the 5 Admiral Lynch in his debut for the Maker Barn. We'll wrap things up in the nightcap, and we'll do so quickly here as we end the day with a 1 mile off the turf race. And just looking at the body of the field, nobody really sold me, and I got all the way outside to the 16 in Grado off that recent performance with the speed and just stepped forward on the dirt in his 3rd start, and that was good enough for me to put this colt by Uncle Mo on top.
Yeah, big improvement last time from his first dirt race 2 starts back. He's definitely a player. I stuck with the number 1 Bahamian Park, who was a distant second, but a second nonetheless last time out on that main track race, and hoping he can kind of build off of that, as nobody was beating Scar last time out.
No, definitely not. Slow race for Bahamian Park, but again, she might be able, or he might be able to take his game forward this afternoon for trainer John Kimmel and jockey Rod Ortiz Jr. Now, you and I picked different horses in the last today, but we can agree. Some good news over the dark days, the 3 dark days, with one of our favorites, Starship Jubilee, being announced the Canadian 2019 Horse of the Year.
She really is an amazing story. Claimed here at Gulfstream for $16,000. Now a Grade 1 winner. We've been privileged to see her down here a couple of winters in South Florida, and it's always fun getting to watch her on the racetrack.
And this is a double dose of Pete Aiello, who had the call of Starship Jubilee's first win, first start of 2019, what would lead to a big sovereign honor. Here it is, the Sunshine Filly Mare Turf with Starship Jubilee, before we turn it over to Pete for the scratches and changes.
Less than 3/8 of a mile to go. They've got to Madame Uno. Starship Jubilee, 3 wide and up for the lead. Picara tries to run with her from second, thinking Cowtown third. Then Southern Sis and Bitacora as they turn home. It's now the favorite, Starship Jubilee, to take charge and move away by 3. Back to second is Picara. Down the center, Bitacora, Shanghai Starlet, and Mrs. Ramona G. They're all left in the classy wake of Starship Jubilee. 13 posts, no problem. She wins by 4. Picara upper second was Bitacora. Third was Mrs. Ramona G. Then Shanghai Starlet and Southern Sis.